August 24th, 79 AD, 1 p.m. A Roman businessman is counting coins in his shop. A mother is baking bread. Children are playing in the streets. In exactly 2 hours, Mount Vesuvius will explode with the force of 100,000 atomic bombs. In 24 hours, every single one of them will be frozen in time forever. But here's what nobody tells you about that day. They had warnings, multiple warnings, and they ignored every single one of them. This is the minute-by-minute breakdown of the deadliest 24 hours in ancient history and how 2,000 people sealed their fate without even knowing it.
Let me take you back to the morning of August 24th, 79 AD. Pompeii is thriving. This isn't some backwater village. We're talking about a city of 20,000 people with running water, public baths, theaters, and some of the most valuable real estate in the Roman Empire. The weather is perfect, the sky is clear. Mount Vesuvius, that mountain looming over the city, hasn't erupted in over 800 years. Nobody alive has ever seen it active. To the people of Pompeii, it's just part of the landscape. But what they don't know is that for the past 72 hours, something catastrophic has been building beneath their feet. The magma chamber under Vesuvius has been filling, the pressure mounting, and the mountain has been screaming warnings that everyone completely missed. Small earthquakes had been rattling the city for days. Nothing major, just enough to knock over a vase here, crack a wall there. The wells had started running dry. Dogs were acting strange, barking at nothing, refusing to settle. Birds had largely disappeared from the area. But here's the thing about humans. We're really good at normalizing danger. Pompeii had experienced a massive earthquake 17 years earlier in 62 AD. It had devastated the city, and they'd spent nearly 2 decades rebuilding. So when these minor tremors started, people just thought, well, aftershocks, nothing we haven't dealt with before. This is the psychological trap that would kill them. Now, let's talk about the hours leading up to the eruption, because this is where it gets fascinating and heartbreaking at the same time. Around 10 a.m., the tremors are getting stronger, not enough to panic, but enough that some people are nervous. We know from the archaeological evidence that some residents actually did leave that morning. Not many, maybe a few hundred, but some people trusted their instincts and got out. The vast majority stayed. Why? Because of what behavioral scientists now call normalcy bias, the brain's tendency to underestimate the possibility of disaster and assume that life will continue as normal. At noon, there's a stronger quake. Market stalls shake. Some pottery falls and shatters in shops. A few people start gathering their valuables just in case, but most people continue their day. There's business to conduct, bread to bake, social obligations to fulfill. Some wealthy Romans are actually hosting lunch parties at their villas, reclining on couches, being served wine and delicacies by slaves. Life goes on. 1 p.m. This is the moment. Everything changes. Mount Vesuvius explodes with a sound that can be heard 100 miles away. A column of ash, pumice, and rock shoots 21 miles into the sky. That's 3 times higher than a commercial jet flies. The explosion is so violent that it punches through the cloud layer and keeps going. Within minutes, the sun disappears. Within 15 minutes, a darkness unlike anything these people have ever experienced descends on Pompeii. We're not talking about nighttime darkness. We're talking about absolute suffocating blackness, like being buried alive. And then it starts raining. But it's not water, it's pumice, lightweight volcanic rock, falling from the sky like a blizzard from hell. Each stone is the size of a walnut, and they're falling by the millions, billions. The sound is deafening, a constant hammering on roofs, on the streets, on people's heads if they're caught outside. Here's where the survival decisions begin, and this is crucial to understand. At this point, people who ran had a good chance of surviving. The pumice is falling at about 6 inches per hour. It's dangerous. It's terrifying, but it's not immediately lethal. If you covered your head, grabbed your family, and started running towards Naples or any direction away from the mountain, you could make it. But most people didn't run. Why? 3 reasons. First, the visibility is nearly zero. You literally cannot see your hand in front of your face. The air is thick with ash. Every breath burns your lungs. The idea of running into this darkness, potentially getting separated from your family, maybe falling into a ravine or getting lost, it's terrifying. Second, their valuables are in their homes. We're talking about people's entire life savings, jewelry, family heirlooms, business records. The thought of abandoning everything they've worked for is unbearable. And third, and this is the killer, most people think the eruption will stop. They think, let's wait it out, let's shelter in place, we'll go to the strongest room in the house, wait for this to pass, and tomorrow we'll clean up and rebuild. This is the decision that dooms them. By 3 p.m., 2 hours into the eruption, the pumice has piled up 2 feet deep in the streets. Roofs are starting to collapse under the weight. The people who stayed in their homes are now trapped. The pumice has blocked the doors. Some try to dig out. Some give up and huddle together in interior rooms, praying to their gods.
Meanwhile, the people who did run are struggling through a nightmare landscape. The darkness is total. The air is toxic. They're wading through pumice that's now waist-deep in places. Some are carrying children. Some are carrying bags of coins that will ultimately slow them down and contribute to their deaths. But they're moving, and that's what matters. By 5 p.m., the pumice in Pompeii is now 6 feet deep. Most roofs have collapsed. The people still inside buildings are trapped in shrinking pockets of space, the volcanic debris literally burying them alive, slowly. The temperature is rising. The air is becoming unbreathable. Some people die from suffocation, some from being crushed, but most are still alive, waiting, hoping, praying for it to end. Then, at around 1 a.m., 12 hours into the eruption, everything gets exponentially worse. The eruption column, which has been shooting straight up into the sky, becomes unstable. The laws of physics take over. You cannot shoot that much material that high into the atmosphere indefinitely. It collapses. What happens next is called a pyroclastic surge. Imagine a ground-hugging cloud of superheated gas, ash, and rock moving at 180 miles per hour with a temperature of 500 degrees Fahrenheit. It races down the mountain like an avalanche made of fire. Nothing can outrun it. Nothing can stop it. It hits the outskirts of Pompeii in seconds. The people still trapped in buildings die instantly. The heat is so intense that their brains literally boil inside their skulls, causing them to explode. Their bodies contort into the pugilistic pose, arms and legs drawn up like boxers as their muscles contract from the heat. They're flash-fried where they stand, where they huddle, where they pray. But here's something that's even more chilling. Some people survived the first pyroclastic surge. There were 6 surges in total over the next 6 hours, each one more powerful than the last. Between surges, there were moments of relative calm, and in those moments we have evidence that people tried to escape. We found bodies in doorways, bodies in streets, bodies clustered in groups, all facing away from Vesuvius, all trying to run. There's one particularly haunting discovery, a group of 13 people, including children, who made it all the way to the ancient beach, probably thinking they could escape by boat. They huddled together in boat storage chambers, holding each other. The final surge found them there. They died together, facing the sea, so close to salvation they could probably hear the waves. By 8 a.m. on August 25th, 19 hours after the eruption began, Pompeii is buried under 20 feet of volcanic material. The city has simply disappeared. From the bay, sailors can see that the coastline has changed. The mountain looks different, but the city? Gone, vanished as if it never existed. The final death toll is estimated between 2,000 and 16,000 people. We'll never know exactly because we haven't excavated everything, and many bodies were likely completely destroyed or washed away. But what we do know is this: most of those deaths were preventable.
If people had run when the eruption first started, if they'd valued their lives over their possessions, if they'd trusted their instincts over their normalcy bias, thousands would have survived. Now here's why this story matters today, nearly 2,000 years later. Vesuvius is still an active volcano. It's actually one of the most dangerous volcanoes on Earth because 3 million people now live in its shadow, in Naples, in the towns around the mountain, in areas that would be completely destroyed if it erupted with the same force it did in 79 AD. And scientists tell us it's not a question of if Vesuvius will erupt again, but when. The Italian government has evacuation plans. They have warning systems, they have protocols. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Studies show that if Vesuvius showed signs of an imminent eruption today, a significant percentage of people would not evacuate. They'd wait, they'd doubt, they'd think about their homes, their possessions, their businesses. Human nature hasn't changed. But let's talk about why Pompeii became the most famous disaster in ancient history. It's not just about the death toll. Other disasters killed more people. It's not just about the volcano. Other eruptions were more powerful. It's about what happened next. Pompeii was buried and forgotten for over 1,500 years. The city's location was lost. People knew something had been there, but the exact spot? Unknown. Then, in 1748, archaeologists started digging in the area. What they found was unprecedented, an entire Roman city frozen in time, preserved by the very disaster that destroyed it. The volcanic ash had sealed everything in an airless environment. Wood was preserved, food was preserved, paint on walls looked fresh. And then there were the bodies, or rather the voids where bodies had been. The bodies themselves had decomposed, but they'd left perfect hollow spaces in the hardened ash. In the 1860s, an archaeologist named Giuseppe Fiorelli had a genius idea. Pump plaster into these voids and create casts of the victims. What emerged were some of the most powerful archaeological artifacts ever discovered. Not statues, not monuments, actual human beings frozen in their final moments. We can see their faces, we can see their expressions, we can see exactly what they were doing when they died. There's the Garden of the Fugitives, 13 people who died together trying to escape, including a mother clutching her child. There's a man who died covering his mouth, trying to filter the toxic air. There's a dog, still chained to a post, frozen in agony as it tried to escape. There's a wealthy man who died on his back, his mouth open in what might have been a final scream or gasp for air, coins scattered around him, the money he chose over his life. These aren't just archaeological specimens, these are time capsules of human experience. Every cast tells a story of choice, of fear, of love, of regret. They force us to confront our own mortality and our own decision-making under pressure. What can we learn from Pompeii? I think there are 3 crucial lessons. First, when disaster warnings come, listen. Don't normalize the danger. Don't wait to see if things get worse. Don't assume you'll have time to react later. The people of Pompeii had warnings, the earthquakes, the strange animal behavior, the environmental changes. They ignored them because they couldn't imagine that their world could end so suddenly and completely. But it did. Second, things are more important than stuff, always. The people who died with bags of coins, who stayed to protect their shops, who went back for jewelry, they made the wrong choice. Your life, your family's lives, these are the only things that truly matter. Everything else can be replaced or rebuilt. And third, disasters don't discriminate. In the ruins of Pompeii, we found the wealthy and the poor, masters and slaves, the young and the old, all buried together. The volcanic surge didn't care about your social status or your bank account. In the face of nature's power, we're all equally fragile. This should be humbling. This should make us more prepared, more humble, more aware of how quickly everything can change. The people of Pompeii weren't stupid. They weren't ignorant. They were people just like us, living their lives making rational decisions based on the information they had and the psychological biases we all share. The only difference between them and us is that we have the benefit of hindsight. We can look back and see exactly where they went wrong. We can learn from their mistakes. So the next time you're watching the news and there's a warning about a hurricane, a wildfire, a flood, and you think it won't be that bad, or I'll wait and see, remember Pompeii. Remember those plaster casts. Remember the people who waited just a little too long, who convinced themselves it would be fine, who didn't want to overreact. Because somewhere right now there's a city sitting in the shadow of a volcano, a coastline that will one day face a tsunami, a forest that will eventually burn. And the people living there are living their normal lives, just like the people of Pompeii on the morning of August 24th, 79 AD. The question isn't whether disaster will strike. The question is, when it does, will you be the person who ran or the person who waited?